Now we are. Thank you.
Very official. All right, well then let's, Ms. Stebbins, if you don't mind giving us the information, the director information.
Do you have the report that was submitted?
We have the informational items, yes. And so normally in this time, it's kind of been used to see if there's anything that you want to highlight in particular, or if there's anything that you wanted to go into more detail on some of the items from what we were given.
So let me see. I think the biggest things that have to highlight have to do with our CPS news, which was a carryover from last informational items, I believe, but or I'm not sure if you got that or not, but we've had a huge turnover in our CPS department right now, our Child Protective Services Investigations unit. We've lost 5 workers, I believe, over the last couple of months. And so that is a significant hole that we are needing to fill. So we're using Family Preservation Services has been taking on family assessments, and we're using other folks at other child welfare units to also help with intake and at other items as needed. And then the other piece of that is we hired a temp to do some CPS investigations, but they have another full-time job, so they're doing those in the evenings and weekends, which is putting bigger stress on our CPS supervisors, who have to then supervise this person during on-call hours. So this is a massive stress to our child welfare system that is going on right now, and we are. Our managers and our assistant director over child welfare they have really banded together and are working hard to find solutions, and we're trying to get people hired as quickly as possible and in, but just to be aware that it is a huge stressor on our system right now. And then also there's a lot going on in terms of Office of Housing, but Philip is on, so he can answer any questions if you had any questions about those, but just in terms of getting some additional help in their unit and some staffing changes, things like that going on, as well as some grant projects that have been going on as well. What else? And then, just as a note, Family Preservation Services, and Megan is the supervisor for that program. They elected to share a story of one of the workers shared that really highlights the really good work that they do and the engagement that we have, that we use with families, and positive outcomes that can come of that. So I just think it's a really, really good way to exemplify what we do. So Megan, I appreciate your unit doing that and putting in this story. I think to me, it really spoke to me when I read it. It's nice to have that sort of real, like tangible, like this is what we do feel to our work. So I enjoyed that. There's a lot of changes in terms of policy in benefits, which Wanda can speak to more than I can if you have questions about those. Some of it it's good, but it's putting a lot more work on our folks in terms of increasing eligibility for SNAP and Medicaid programs, increasing prenatal coverage for individuals who aren't citizens or don't have those types of like some of the requirements to get prenatal coverage have gone away, which is good. And then finally, we get a new director, academic. I'm sure you all have heard by now, but she's joining us on Monday. So she'll be here. Her first day is August 16th. So we're excited to have her. And then ARPA funds have been distributed or are in the process of getting to, I don't know if they're there yet or not, but it should be any day if they're not there already, to the United Way, so that we can again start our emergency rental and mortgage assistance for residents that we do in partnership with the city and United Way. So that is a quick lowdown of what you have in front of you. Any questions that I can answer?
I have a statement, is that I'm really glad, I'm sorry that you're going through what you're going through for the stresses that you have, but as a board, and also as having done this work, is that I know that there are a lot of stresses, and I appreciate your admission of that and presenting that, because it isn't all wonderful stories.
Right.
And I think we need to, as a board, be aware of that as time goes on. So thank you.
You're welcome. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it is important to hear when things are not necessarily ideal. I think often people want the board to know all the good things that are going on. There are a ton of them, and we know that. But yeah, I think honesty and just being transparent is really important. I did have a question about the increased eligibility for SNAP.
Yes.
So are we contacting people who had previously applied and were found ineligible if now they are now, if they are eligible now? Because how else would they know that that the criteria had changed and that now they would qualify?
Do you know the answer to that, Wanda?
We are not making a specific attempt to notify people that were ineligible. The reason is, during the whole COVID time, people's eligibility rules were significantly lowered. And so if anything, some of the people that were approved originally would not have been eligible normally. So this is just making somewhat a formal process and changing our income guidelines, et cetera. So it's not really going to be, should not be a huge impact on anybody that was found ineligible. If they were ineligible during COVID, they're probably still ineligible. Okay.
So if you estimated how many people it's going to impact or how many people it's going to add to who would now qualify for SNAP benefits, what would you say that was?
I have no idea. I haven't even begun to unpeel that onion. Just too many layers of that to go through. So we can report back if we see a change or trend.
Yeah, we track our numbers every month.
Yeah.
And they've been steadily increasing. They had huge spikes, and they've been increasing through COVID. And so we'll continue to watch that and see how they grow.
And we'll report out if we see anything that can be attributed to a change in policy.
Okay. Another note that I had made was about how we had the part-time or the temporary CPS investigator doing things in the evenings and weekends, and then that's increasing the need for the on-call CPS supervisor to work after hours, which is uncompensated.
Yes.
This doesn't seem wise in a department that has 5 vacancies or that is having major turnover. I feel like you wonder why when you have someone having to do extra work uncompensated. So is there some way to give that employee comp time? Is there a different compensation plan? Like, how are we going to keep that employee from burning out, when we're already struggling?
That is an excellent question that we've been talking about. The assistant director and I have been talking about is what can we do for our managers? Because our child welfare managers, of our mandated program, so there are 5 of them, do on-call evenings and weekends. They take turns, but year round, there's 2 of them on call at a time. And there is no compensation for that. So we try to give them, an extra day of time off, those types of things, a month, I think it is, or something, but that's not enough. And so we have been talking about what can we do and how can we better support them, because when they're on call, it's not always, but often they're working. Like they're fielding calls. They're not, some weeks are of course not as busy as others, but they are working when they're on call. So how can we better support them is a huge issue, and we're trying to figure out what we can do at this point to better take care of them, whether it be compensation in some way, which we need to go through, of course, the HR process and budget and all that, but it's on our radar for sure, because they work a lot more hours. They work a lot of hours that aren't compensated.
If I can add to that, this also affects the adult services supervisor as well. And the process improvement management team that we have has selected our on-call process to be our next process to evaluate and determine if we can improve. So everything will be on the table to look at and see how we can make it better. But the flexing the time off is usually the most often used.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad it's going to be coming up soon for to be evaluated and hopefully changed in a positive way. The last note, the question that I had is about our policy designated time frame for responding to CPS referrals. So if we don't respond to them and that's logged, I imagine that reflects badly on the department over time. I'm sure they understand if there are short-term things that come up, like our staff shortage right now. But are we at all in danger of reaching a position where we're going to have some sort of red flag at the state level, or losing some kind of an accreditation if we don't keep those numbers up?
So not locally, no. So we have been working really hard to keep those numbers in the time frame where we need them to be, and we have met those or been very close pretty regularly. We track that monthly as well. Those are part of our KPI, our key performance indicators. So we look at those monthly and quarterly, and there had been, up until very recently, real focus on that, and we had been meeting those timeframes or pretty close to the standard every month. What's more concerning is at the state level, and the state has a huge emphasis on it because in order to pass the federal review that happened in 2016, I think, this is statewide, we had to do a performance improvement plan. It's the CFSR review. It's the Child and Family Services review through the feds. And if we don't meet as a state a certain level by, I don't know, it's coming up pretty soon now, then we will not pass the PIP, the performance improvement plan, and we will owe the federal government as a state lots of money. So there are ramifications at the state level, which then will trickle down to the localities. Us specifically, I mean, it would affect the state as a whole and the programs as a whole. Us specifically, I don't think we're like locally in any specific danger.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I appreciate you
Sure.
repeating that.
Yes.
So Karen, if you don't have any other questions,
You don't?
okay, then I think we can move ahead then to the presentation. And I would love to introduce the presenters, but I can't because I don't really know you very well. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, I can introduce them if you want. I have with us are Philip Holbrook and Megan Tertoka. As they said, like Philip is our program manager for our housing program, and Megan is our family preservation supervisor. And they are here to talk to us today about relaunching the family reunification program, which they can, I'll let them take it away and they can tell you what that's all about and what we're trying to do. So I'll turn it over to them.
Megan, are you cool if I lead off?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, great. Well, thank you all for having us. I really appreciate you taking the time to learn more about this program. And it's an oldie but a goodie, been around for quite a while. Some of the initial documents we have are from back in '94. So when we say we're relaunching this, it really is a reinvigoration of a program that's been around for quite a while, but that we just haven't tapped into in recent years. So I have a PowerPoint presentation that Mary, can I share this? Let's see if I do have sharing rights. Great. So I will share this in one moment. Is that sharing? Does that work? All right, wonderful. So the Family Unification Program. Briefly, I want to share kind of a little bit of a bit of information on our programming in general, because it will help you understand the Family Unification Program. Our flagship program that we run within the Office of Housing here is our Housing Choice Voucher Program. It is funded through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and we are, even though we're part of DSS, we are a HUD-funded public housing agency. When I say flagship, we have 429 available housing choice vouchers. We also have other programming, like down in Scottsville, Scottsville School. We actually run that voucher program down there. We also have a mainstream program for individuals with disabilities. The Family Unification Program is a subset of the Housing Choice Voucher Program. It enables a family to rent anywhere within our jurisdiction with a tenant-based voucher that is funded through this Family Unification Program. So FUPs is what they're called. And we have opportunities for FUP-F and FUP-Y, FUP-F being families and Y being for youth. To date, I believe we've focused exclusively on families, and that's where we are right now, is wanting to relaunch the family side of things, starting with one versus going through both and trying to relaunch not only one program that's already ongoing, but also a second component with the youth. So we're going to maybe tap into that in the future, but right now we're talking about the family side of things. In short, DSS as a whole. So we have a partnership with a public child welfare agency is how HUD defines it. And in our case, we're all underneath the same umbrella. So it feels a little odd, but we are partnered with ACDSS for a referral of eligible families over to ACOH, the Office of Housing, ACOH, for participation in our Housing Choice Voucher Program. The referral process, again, I'll go through in just a little bit, but it's just for the families is primarily what Megan and I are going to be talking about today. So for us, things are, set up locally in many ways. HUD kind of does what they do, where they provide you the bare bones of the program and a lot of sticking points, but then there's the local preferences and how we actually implement our partnership. So we do have an MOU between our two entities. ACDSS provides the eligibility component on their side, and then we are able to come in and actually provide the voucher. So when a family or youth is determined to be FUP eligible, right now it's going through Alice Micklem. She's kind of the gatekeeper for that referral process. And they come our way and are actually admitted to our program through our waiting list. So if you're unfamiliar with that process, we do have a two-stage application process that all of our clients go through. And the first stage gets them onto our waiting list, where some clients have historically sat for 3, 4, 5 years. But the FUP program, as long as we have a voucher available, has a much tighter turnaround. So we go through that first application process to get them on the waiting list. And then if we have a voucher available, immediately pull them and move towards full eligibility, getting that voucher in hand, and assisting them to move towards finding a safe, secure space to live. It's important to know that FUP families are treated no differently than Housing Choice Voucher families. So there's no preferential treatment given, and there's nothing really expected of them above and beyond, from our office at least. Now, from DSS's side of things, the families themselves may partake in ongoing supportive services, and the youth side of things, they are required for the first 18 months to take part in supportive services. So from the DSS side, if you're curious as to how eligibility kicks off, the goal, and it's a little wordy, but for eligible families, a lack of adequate housing is the primary factor in a child either entering foster care or a child being unable to exit foster care and reunify with their family. So I like to think of it from unification, either keeping them unified or enabling them to become unified. Lack of adequate housing is pretty broad. Homelessness is kind of one of the top ones that I think is coming up, and that if you're living in a hotel, you are technically homeless. So that may work for some of our families. But as you can see here, we have a list of substandard or dilapidated housing. Being homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. Domestic violence is also another consideration that may make that housing not adequate. And then inaccessibility for youth or children who may be disabled. So that's how a family can gain admittance to the FUP program and be referred our direction. I'll briefly touch on youth here, but again, we're not there right now. But this would be a youth who are aged 18, but not yet 24. They've left foster care at 16 plus, or will leave within the next 90 days. And homelessness is a component. You'll see a huge list down there at the bottom of all of these little caveats that must be met. But in short, homelessness is concerned. They do not have a support network that they can head to. Income is a consideration. So a lot of challenges that would come with that. But, this is an opportunity that we could look into in the future as well. On our side of things, a little bit of a simple entry point for just initial admittance, and that's income-based as well as citizenship, and ensuring that we receive Social Security numbers. That gets them through that first stage of getting onto the waiting lists. And then once they're actually pulled from the waiting list for a voucher, we go through a much more in-depth process. But one of the advantages here is that we can step through that with their casework on the DSS side to ensure that they have the supportive services there to get all of that paperwork together. So what do FUP families do? When they join up, they are issued a voucher, and the voucher is based on family size. So we have a 2 heartbeat per room policy. So a family, say, of 4 would be given a 2-bedroom voucher. It's important to note that a family unit, even though perhaps the children are outside of the home, so if it's a parent who has 3 children that are in foster care, that would be considered a 4-member household. So they're able to get that 2-bedroom voucher. So we wouldn't have like a single parent who is trying to get the kids to come home, but all of a sudden doesn't have space because they only have an efficiency with 1 room. But they are issued a voucher, and that has basically a subsidy amount, the amount tied to it. They search for a unit on the open market and can rent up anywhere in those jurisdictions you'll see on the screen. So Albemarle, Charlottesville, and then we go into some surrounding counties as well. Once our office receives a request for tenancy, we go through approval, which includes making sure the unit is up to housing quality standards, that the rent's reasonable, and that we're not having the clients pay too much of their income, if they do have income, towards their rent. We go through some contracts and ensure that we're all on the same page, but these clients are entering into real leases with owners, so there's a real responsibility there as well. Yet again, another opportunity for those supportive services to ensure that lease obligations are met, which is a challenge for many of our families. Real quick, specific to us, before I let Megan share more here, we do have 25 FUPs that we have been awarded through a previous award cycle, I guess back in the 90s, to be able to get these vouchers for ACOH. 20 are currently being used and 5 are available. So those 5 are what we're seeking to fill right now. And I'm very, very hopeful that we can get those filled as soon as possible. The wait list for our office right now is closed, but it is open indefinitely for FUP referrals to ensure that when those vouchers become available, they are pulled from the list. We also have to make sure that we are looking at our internal list right now to see if there are some eligible families, and that's something that we're working through. HUD requires us to do that. So it's not just the referral, but we may have some families on our list right now who could be kind of back referred in some ways and be made eligible for a FUP voucher. And we still have preferences that go into effect. So, if we had 40 families on the list that were FUP eligible, individuals perhaps who met some of these preferences at the bottom, so living and working in Albemarle or VAWA status. So those might raise their chances of getting a voucher a little bit earlier on. But but that's kind of the specifics directly to our agency. And Megan, I will stop talking now and let you share some about some other opportunities that we have for serving folks.
Yeah, so as Philip has explained the program overall and the eligibility, I wanted to talk more about the people who our agency currently serves that the FUP program will be most beneficial to. That we primarily are referring families for FUP vouchers from our Family Preservation Services team or our foster care team, because again, with our starting focus being on families, when families are working with the Family Preservation Services team, they're already identified as being at risk of having their children enter foster care. And if their children are in foster care, obviously would potentially meet eligibility for the unification piece. We are exploring whether there may be FUP eligible families that could be referred by Child Protective Services directly, or either of our school-based prevention programs as well. Part of the reason that we've focused on making referrals from Family Preservation Services and foster care is that we have internal data that shows that 38% of the families who the Family Preservation Services team is currently serving or has historically served over the past couple of fiscal years report experiencing either homelessness or housing instability at the point that they're coming to our team for services. And we also know, if we're talking about foster youth who are aging out of care, that nationally 42% of them experience homelessness before age 21. And I will add that part of the reason we're focusing this initial pilot on families is that the Fostering Futures program has added additional supports to youth who are aging out of care or turning 18 while in care that is different than when FUP vouchers first became available to our area back in the 90s. And part of what stemmed this recent pilot is that the Family Preservation team, we unfortunately had a couple of families who were homeless and had no adequate housing and whom we were paying for to reside temporarily in the Red Carpet Inn. And as you all may be aware, that closed a few months ago rather abruptly, and not all of the tenants were given notice to make alternative plans. So at that time, we had at least two families who really were in a housing crisis that was added on by this hotel closing. And we were experiencing a lot of challenges in the community finding anywhere else for these families to go. That led us to reach out to Philip's office and other community partners to explore what we could do differently or better to help families who were in this type of crisis. So far in our pilot, we've attempted to refer through, or what we have referred 3 families for FUP vouchers. The first 2, unfortunately, weren't successfully able to obtain FUP vouchers, and we learned a lot of lessons in those process. One of the families was unable to meet eligibility because they unfortunately had their children removed in the context of the referral process, and those children were able to be placed safely with relatives. And the other referral, there were just other challenges with coordination amongst service providers and her transparency with getting documentation. But the lessons that we learned from those 2 pilot cases that did not achieve getting a FUP voucher were really the need for us internally to make sure that when we're referring families for FUP vouchers, that they have all of the documentation and the support that they need to complete the application prior to us even making or initiating the referral. Because once that referral is made and the timeline goes forward, it can be a rather rapid timeline, and there is a lot of documentation and paperwork required to successfully complete the application. So currently we have a referral pending that's in the process that we believe is going to be successful. So hopefully we will have good news to report on that soon. And what we are also really hopeful for with this voucher program is that when families are experiencing homelessness or other types of housing crises, it really makes them live in survival mode. And when they're in survival mode, having the ability to focus on any of the other underlying issues that led them to become involved with social services can be quite challenging. So that through this program, we really hope that we'll be able to target the families in most need and have them stabilize in housing to be able to offer them supportive services, even though for families it's not mandated. It is our intention as an agency to offer those services after the FUP voucher is received.
Okay. Megan, did you have anything else to share?
No, I think that's kind of the summary where we are hopeful that we'll be able to have some pilot cases from the foster care side as well. Just to start, we've had some identified in family preservation, but foster care is certainly hoping to be able to take advantage of this soon as well.
I have a basic housing question. What is the difference between the vouchers and Section 8? I don't understand the difference.
Great question. Yeah, they're one and the same.
Oh, okay.
Kind of a rebranding effort, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Housing choice voucher has a bit of a, well, I guess I could say Section 8 has a bit of a connotation to it. Whereas housing choice voucher, by calling it a different name is one thing. My 16-month-old just woke up from naps, so joys of work from home. Yeah, the housing choice voucher just kind of puts a different brand on it, but it does, I think it calls more to what the program is, which it enables choice. It enables individuals to take that voucher and choose where they want to live.
Right, right.
But yeah, same program.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Are you finding that that there's a problem with finding landlords who will accept the voucher?
Yeah.
Well, to an extent, I'm going to stop my screen share. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. To an extent, yes. However, we have, first of all, as of July of last year, it is now against fair housing law to discriminate against someone based on their source of income. So that's been a big step. There are some caveats there, but we like to have some positive but frank discussions with owners about that, and they're starting to get on board. We also do have a new staff member that we announced a couple months back. She's about 4 months in. Carter Walker, our rental assistance coordinator, and one of Carter's huge improvements for our agency has been her owner outreach and ensuring that we are doing our part to actively find and bring new owners onto the program. And it's been successful to date. We'll report more on it as she gets to a point where she'd like to put forward that data, but we're starting to see a bump up in the new owners that are joining up and that are willing to rent. And then it's about retaining those and staying engaged with them and continuing to provide some customer service that we've maybe lacked in the past. So it's a tight market, and we can't change that tight market until we as a community create more affordable housing. But that's a bit of a longer term goal. Right now, we're trying to make sure that the stock that's here, that we have access to it and our clients are aware of it and able to gain access.
And how often does the amount actually adjust? Is it an annual adjustment? Because, at the local market, it could be 6 months from now that the rents have changed dramatically. But if that housing voucher hasn't changed that much, like the families could be in a difficult spot. So how often does that amount change or update?
Sure. So HUD releases fair market rents each year around October. So we are anxiously awaiting that, but it's set by HUD. And those fair market rents did decrease last year, which was a little bit of a shock to everybody in the housing world because rents went up. So it's a little tough to kind of rate those two, but we locally set our payment standards, and the team put forward a proposal to Director Savitas last year to increase our payment standard. And in short, what that does is that increases the amount of subsidy that we can help provide for our clients. So we are currently at 106% of fair market rents to try to kind of mitigate some of that decrease to fair market rents that HUD released. Fingers crossed that October we'll see perhaps a bump. and we might be able to ensure that we're meeting some of those rent increases locally. But that's always a fine dance, and ensuring that we're doing our part to try to subsidize units that are affordable, and then the market also not driving up rents for units that are not, not really up into a certain rent range that maybe owners are seeking. So we do have a rent reasonableness that we go through to ensure that our clients aren't put in that situation where they cannot afford their rent. So we have that conversation often with clients. But the good news is, clients, when they walk into a lease and that rent's set, it's not like an owner has the ability to come in 3 months into that lease and bump the rent because rents are going up. So our clients have been able to weather this decently, but it's still tough out there.
And the new housing that's going to be built, I guess, is the Red Roof Inn location, right? But it's going to be new. If they're tearing it down, or I don't know if they're renovating. I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Sure.
That they're building, is that a completely different program and a completely different like benefit? So that wouldn't affect these families at all, or are some of those units also intended for families like this?
So I'll answer to the best of my knowledge. The development that is going on right now has multiple multifamily buildings on site. The Office of Housing, which we mentioned, I think last year, we did award project vouchers to one of the multifamily units that is being built. It's with Virginia Supportive Housing out of Richmond, and they build exclusively for supportive housing. So that will not be FUP eligible units. That specific property that's built. Now, I believe, and don't quote me on this part, but I believe that there's also one of the other one that's being built is going to be a 50% AMI or less rental property. And so if that property ends up being open to anyone at 50% AMI or less, then theoretically a FUP family could lease up there, if that makes sense. So one of the buildings will be reserved specifically for individuals experiencing homelessness who need a subsidized unit to live in with supportive services. So there will be a strategy we'll be able to tap into there. The other property very well may be for FUP families, but we're talking, 2023, 4, 5 for something like that to actually be built. So for the FUPs we're looking at right now, we're hoping that once those get issued, that we're able to get them connected with Carter, and Carter can start trying to make sure that they're looking at the units that we've identified as available, and that hopefully our partnership with the DSS folk who are providing their side of the supportive services, that we can all work together to try to navigate what is the challenge of finding a unit here and going through the application process, which is daunting when you're dealing with as many challenges as our clients are.
Right. And if they are using the housing choice voucher and it's through the FUP program, does that remove any prerequisites that the property owner might want to put in place for the application, like a good rental history or a credit check? I don't even know if they're allowed to do a credit check any longer, but those barriers still exist, I feel like.
Yeah, and that's that's federally codified in regulation that owners are still allowed to vet clients through any type of screening criteria that they may have. So we don't really have any levers to pull there. So they still have to pass any screening criteria that are set forth. The good news is, a lot of the owners that we work with, and as we continue to develop and build relationships with them, I don't think we're ever going to be able to force them to say rent to someone who has an eviction on their record or has a criminal conviction. I mean, those are some pretty big red flags that require a big systemic change. But the more that we work with our clients and hopefully launch into some programming like the Good Neighbor program that we're looking at, which is an idea that we've come up with to ensure that clients and owners are both educated on how to be a good neighbor and how to work well together and have a positive rental experience. which many of our clients don't have positive rental experiences for one reason or another. You start with that as the groundwork, and having kind of an equal footing as to how you expect your relationship to play out, then you have less of a chance of a client having that really negative experience and then losing an owner, or a client losing their place to live and getting evicted, right? So you try to kind of mitigate some of those big red flags that are going to create rental obstacles in the future by building up positive rental experiences between our owners that we work with repeatedly and our clients that we're working with repeatedly. Just some case management there.
And I would add that because the FUP families are receiving services through the child welfare team, we've also had cases where we've been able to find funding to help families pay application fees if they're having to apply multiple properties. And that would be something we would be continuing to advocate for with these families, and also providing coaching around how to talk to landlords and how to advocate for themselves and be empowered to challenge some of those barriers. Not that it makes them all, easily overcome, but we do try to provide the support to families through that process.
Yeah, I love that. That's really impressive, the Good Neighbor program, and also just like teaching people how to advocate for themselves. I mean, I feel like everyone needs a Good Neighbor program. None of us are born knowing how to live in a community and get along with others and, treat people fairly and kindly and take care of property. And it's lessons that some people learn the hard way and some people never learn. So that's great. Karen, you were going to say something?
No, I think it's good programs.
Yeah. That's all the questions I noted.
I wanted to mention one last thing on the FUP program, if I may, and that's, we have this cap of 25 right now, and I'd like to be able to fill those 5, and I'd like to be able to report back to you on the future a interesting aspect of the program, which is the ability to take one of our current FUP families that one of the 20 that's currently being used, that perhaps is no longer FUP eligible, but the voucher stays with them because that's the way the program's designed. But what's cool is you can actually reissue them a traditional housing choice voucher and take that FUP voucher and reissue it to a new FUP family. So you kind of rotate them out because once there's no longer youth living in the house and it's just a single parent or living on that FUP voucher, they really don't need that targeted voucher any longer. So there's some opportunity there, I think, for some growth with the program, just in case you're curious as to, we're at 5, how do we get more, or how do we assist more families? There's a pathway there and opportunities there. So that is one thing that I do think we'll be able to report back on in the future as we start to rotate these out. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Could you provide
Thank you.
a link to the presentation so that we can send it to the board members who were not able to be here? They'll have access to the recording of the meeting, but it is nice to have the slides if you don't mind sharing those.
Absolutely. Mary, you want me to share those with you or Lisa?
With Lisa, and then because I'm not even sure I have everyone's email address.
At least I can send it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mary. I meant Mary Stebbins. I apologize. Yeah, but Lisa, I can get them to you, and then by all means, share as you will.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, so yeah, I'll encourage the other members who were not able to be here to watch that presentation so that they can catch up and get all the info that we had access to. The next thing I have on the agenda is business from the board. Karen, did you have any business?
I did not.
Okay, there was one thing that I wanted to bring up, and it was kind of in the information items, but I didn't feel like it was really like in that portion of the meeting. And it was about Bright Stars. In July, there was a article in the Daily Progress about how Bright Stars is going to transfer to the school system and be financially covered by them, but I imagine also overseen or supervised by them too. And that was the first that I had heard of that. I don't remember that being brought up in any of our previous meetings, even in June and in May. So I was really surprised to hear that. And I was just wondering if you could kind of fill us in on the reasonings behind that decision and the positive impact it's going to have on?
Sure. Yeah, so this happened pretty quickly, I will say. There had been discussions about it and conversations about it, and what this is the school is now the fiscal agent for the VPI grant. So it is the grant that is being shifted over to the school. So the school system is now responsible for grant management. And the reason how that came about was because we are one of only 2 localities in the entire state where the school system does not manage the BPI grant, first of all. And it creates a lot of complications when the school system, who is responsible and should be responsible for curriculum development for preschoolers and for hiring teachers and TAs and for all of the education management, it is very complicated when we had oversight of the grant and we were responsible for making sure all of the pieces of the grant happened. And, we were responsible, DSS, for things like curriculum development and all of these things that we have no control over because they are an education function. So it didn't make a lot of sense for us, DSS, to be doing those types of things. So that was the impetus for moving the grant. I will say that the program Bright Stars as it stands is still going to function as it does, in terms of there are still the same number of classrooms with the same number of teachers, with the same number of TAs and students, and social services maintains, we still have our same number of family coordinators, our social workers that go in and work with the families and make sure they have the services that they need. That has not changed. We maintain control over, they don't get paid for through the grant. And so we still have those positions, we still supervise those positions, and we still are working very much in collaboration with the schools. I think it was a little misleading when you read the article. I know it was misleading. When I read the article, I was like, it was a little misleading. There's still very much a collaboration between the schools and social services. It is putting the education piece into the school's hands and having them be responsible for it, instead of us having to sign off on things that we had really no business signing off on because we're not educators. So that's what all that had to do with. But it did happen very quickly. We didn't anticipate the money it would happen this year. Like that was quick. Yeah.
Okay. So the updates in our information items each month are still going to continue and things like that.
Absolutely. We are not out of the program at all. We still very much do the social service side of it, and will continue to do so and have control over that.
Okay. Well, I think like your explanation is good. Thank you for giving that. And that's not what I got from the article. So you were right about that.
It's a little misleading. Yes.
Yeah. And I had known that it was very complicated as far as like the in-kind providing of the teachers in the classrooms. But where the multiple funding streams that are coming in through and related to, like, they're already overseeing the exceptional child special education program or the early childhood special education program. So, and this is often running parallel. So, I think streamlining it makes a lot of sense, but I'm glad to hear that DSS is not like cut out of it completely.
Yeah, no, we are. We're still very much a part of the program.
Well, we, unless there's any other business, that we just need to discuss what kind of message out we would like to send to our supervisors. And this is something that in the past, Phyllis used to just kind of condense what our discussion was about or what were the highlights of the presentation. And so if you don't mind doing that.
Not at all.
Okay. then Lisa can send that out to the rest of the board also.
Okay.
I have one quick unrelated question. Wanda, where are you? That is a beautiful background.
I'm gonna want it, yeah.
Well, so this is the Zoom background of a library. I wish it were my house. I am currently in Buckingham County, and the reason it is so dark is there is a massive storm going on. So I keep waiting for my screen to just take me out of here. There's no light outside. It's very dark outside.
Oh, the windows are beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, wow, look at the stained glass.
I know, look at that.
That's what I wish my house was. I can do that though, you know?
That's pretty cool. Well, do you know, Lisa, there was a board member who had not yet been appointed. Do you know if that's completed already?
No, Donna Price had found somebody and then they weren't interested. So at this point, we don't have anyone, but I can email Travis Morris, the senior clerk, and just ask him for a status. I try to do that every month or so. Try not to annoy him too much, but I still do try to check with him just to see if he can tell me, yeah, we have an application, or no, nothing's happening. But I'll email him and I can email that out to y'all and just let you know what he says, because we definitely need that other person.
Yeah, because it would just help us meet a quorum anyway in order to get like the business done, approving minutes and all that other stuff. Cool. Well, thank you so much for such a good meeting. And I'm sorry that there were only 2 of us here, but I still feel like the information is valuable. And I know that the other board members are going to learn a lot when they go over it as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad it could be recorded so that they can see the,
Yeah.
watch it. That's good.
All right. Well, you all
right.
take care. I think we're all done and we'll see you next month.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.